Is everyone logged in? Everyone's good. Everyone has AutoCAD all loaded up. That's kind of good to know. Awesome. Okay. You know, it's funny, the perimeter you're drawing, one of our guys was using that at where I work, but like, our boss had no idea you could do that. And so he thought he was just like doodling on the screen, but he was actually drawing a perimeter select stuff. Okay, so, like I said, I'm going to be teaching basically like directly out of the textbook. So yeah, everyone's got AutoCAD opened up. You don't necessarily need to be doing what I'm doing here, but if you want to follow along by doing the commands that I'm doing, feel free to. The first thing, yeah, this is pretty. The book's pretty basic when it comes to a lot of this stuff. So first thing that it wants to show is how to actually start a new drawing. So like I said, there is a few different ways to do absolutely everything on AutoCAD, which is actually kind of nice. So the first way to do it is just File, New. That's pretty simple. We are going to be working with, which one did it want us to use? Yeah, it does. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it doesn't matter too much, but we're going to be working with this one, ACAD. So one of the first things to talk about when opening up a new drawing is that there's actually two different file types for AutoCAD, and the first one is a .dwg. That's your actual drawing. That's the space that you're working in, and there's also .dwt. That's a drawing template. That is typically created by your CAD manager. The CAD manager makes templates so that there's consistency within the company. So that every single time you open it, all of the properties that you want to be using are loaded in there. So we can go ahead and do it that way. There's also the old school way of doing it to where you just hit Control-N. That's another way. If you do have a drawing open, down here at the bottom, this is called the command line. The command line is the input that you can use when you're using your keyboard. That's what I usually use because it's a whole lot faster. I don't know if anyone is in here is into gaming. I'm a big nerd. Watch a lot of Twitch, and most gamers stream using a PC and a keyboard because it's infinitely faster than a controller. It's the same thing with this. Instead of using the ribbon up here, I'm going to show you how to use the ribbon and the command line. I prefer the command line, but you know I'm not gonna be a stickler. You guys do whatever you're comfortable with. So the third way to start a new drawing is to type NEW, and you'll notice it goes all caps. So typically when you're working in AutoCAD, you have caps lock on the whole entire time. I don't now because we're not working on the drawing itself, but you type new and you can either spacebar or enter. Spacebar is kind of like an enter button. That's another way to start a new drawing. So the things to be familiar with, which it sounds like a lot of you already are, the ribbon up here, this is where all of your basic tools are. Layer states, actual tools to use when drawing. As I've learned, not all commands can be typed in. Sometimes you do actually have to use the ribbon because it's so hard to find. Funny side note, just because I like telling people this, there's a command that's literally Batman, B-A-T-T-M-A-N. It's the Batch Attributes Manager. They didn't realize that they literally spelled Batman though, which is awesome. But so yeah, this is the ribbon up here, like I said, down here, the command line. So when you're using the command line, and let's say we're going to draw a circle. So 9 times out of 10, if you type something in, it's probably going to be that command. So if you type in circle, that's the command. So let's say you draw go ahead and draw it. Another way to, there's 3 ways to hit enter. Enter, spacebar, or right click. Right click is actually the same, is also the same thing. So a very important thing to know, especially once you start getting into 3D, is you have what's called the coordinate system. Okay, that does look good. You have what's called the coordinate system. We are working in 2D, so we're only doing X and Y. The box down here in the lower left-hand corner, that's your Z coordinate. We're not going to be working in 3D at all, but it is still good to know what you're actually looking like, or what you're looking at. I'm sure that the X and Y looks familiar to, what is it, geometry, when you're using y equals mx plus b. That's literally what you're looking at in AutoCAD. It's you can draw curves and everything based on that. I missed that. Another really cool part of AutoCAD that was introduced in like 2008 or something is called the dynamic input. So let's say I go to draw a line. You'll notice I have two different. Yeah, I have 2 different inputs that I can use on here. So either I can click a point to end the line, or I can say, I need this line to be 13 units long, which this drawing doesn't have any properties to it. We'll worry about inches and millimeters and all that stuff later. So it's 13 units long, but I need it 10 degrees. Sorry. So it's 13 units long. That's what goes in the first box. You hit tab, takes it to the other box. And we're going to say it's 10 degrees from the horizontal. So that line is exactly what I want it to be. That's the cool thing about the dynamic input. We'll definitely talk more about that later, though. Oh, hey, I already went over templates for drawings. Cool. So the 2 different file types of templates versus drawings. Now, real quick, my apologies if I'm going a mile a minute. Like I said, I've been doing this for like 18 years now, so like a lot of the stuff is just really basic to me. So if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I'll definitely slow down for you. Does everybody understand the difference between templates and drawings then? Anyone got any questions on it? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so a drawing file, that's your .dwg. That's what you're actually working on. The DWT is kind of it's the foundation of it. So when you go to start a new drawing, you choose a .dwt file because it loads all of the like dimensional properties and units properties and the actual borders that you're going to work with. And then once you go to save that, it becomes a .dwg and it's specific to what you're working on. Yeah. Okay, so we got here our grid display. The grid, it's exactly what it looks like. It's all this hatching in the background. So the hatching in the background, you can actually change that. If you go down here, you'll notice you have your. We'll eventually work through everything that's down here in this little line, just so you're aware. But yeah, so you have your. This is the actual hatching. You can actually modify that. Right-click on it and hit Grid Settings. We'll go over that a little bit more later, but the point is the grid kind of determines. It's helpful when you're working in like whole units. A lot of what I do is an arbitrary space, which is a little frustrating. But when you're working in 2D and everything is on, let's say, a quarter of an inch, half an inch, a whole inch, you can actually set your spacing. So the grid might be at, let's say, half-inch spacing as it's shown here. We got half inches. Whereas you can actually turn your snap on. Snap is something that works. Let's say it works when you're in a command. So right now it moves freely. I'll zoom in. Right now it moves freely. I go to the line command. Now it's snapping to each one of the coordinates. You see how choppy it is? So I don't have this in my notes here, but one thing I do want to make sure to mention is the actual navigating through AutoCAD with the mouse. It seems like everyone seems to be okay, but left click is using commands. It's creating boxes, stuff like that. The center mouse button is what pans in and out, but then if you hold it down, or I'm sorry, center when you roll it zooms in and out. When you hold it down, it'll pan for you. And then right click is, right click. That's kind of like any other program. Let's see here. Okay, that's what that is. Before I move on to the next part, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So one of the neat things about the ribbon is that if you're ever questioning maybe how to use a command or what you're going to use a command for, you can actually just hover over it in the yeah, there we go. You can just hover over it. Bless you. In the ribbon, so it'll kind of give you an idea of what it does, why it does what it does, and sometimes that'll answer your questions. Like this right here, we have a center radius circle. So you put where the center of the circle is, and then you tell the radius. As you go down here, you have center diameter, 2 point, 3 point, and it'll show you what the dynamic input looks like when you start using it. So you don't necessarily have to hit F1, search through it for the rest of your life, and hopefully find what you're looking for before you die, like most other programs. So that was definitely a really cool feature that they added in eventually. Wait, where's that at? That looks like it'll come later. Okay, that does. So, like I was saying earlier, there's kind of a couple different ways to do pretty much everything in AutoCAD. A good example of this is drawing a circle. So, the most basic one of them all is drawing a center point radius circle. But that's not the only way to draw a circle. It's also not the only way to get that. So another way to draw a center radius circle is you type in circle and hit the space bar. There you go. There's your center. There's your radius. Another way to do it, for people like me that are unbelievably old school, you type in C and then hit enter. Because there's a lot of commands that are actually single letters, which is kind of nice. So that's typically how I accomplish that at where I work. What's kind of cool though is let's say you go to draw your circle, and you don't necessarily want to type in the radius. You want to type in the diameter. So now that you're in the command, you see that there's a dynamic input. If you hit the down arrow, again, there's two different ways to do this. If you hit the down arrow, it gives you either you can use the last radius that was in there, or you can use the diameter. So you just using the arrow keys, go to diameter, hit enter. Now that the circle's half the size, now you can type in the diameter. So the diameter we'll say is 9.5, just for fun. That's pretty useful when you have really goofy numbers, like when I'm designing, let's say, a chest for an evaporator system at my job, and you know that the radius, or you know that the diameter of it is 1130. Well, you don't want to sit there and do the math, so you just use diameter instead. Yeah. Another way to do that, start up your circle, you want diameter, you just type in D, enter. That's simple. Let's see here. Yeah, one of the things the book went over is saving a drawing. I know you guys know how to save stuff. One of the big things the book says, save often. I've lost 4 hours worth of work before, which usually ends up with me going outside and sitting there angrily for 10 minutes and then coming back and doing another 4 hours of work on the same thing. I say that because computers don't always like AutoCAD is the problem. So if you are using one of your own computers, make sure that it's running smoothly and you don't lose anything. It's really frustrating when you lose that. Drawing units. It's one of those things that I was saying earlier. Is one of the rather important things when you're working on civil versus architectural or mechanical drawings. If you're doing, if let's say you're mechanical, well here, in order to use the drawing units, it's real simple. You just type in units and hit enter. So you get the drawing unit dialog box pop up. We're gonna go over that a little bit more later. But the major thing here is actually, you know, we'll just go through this whole dialog box right now. So the first thing is your length. Decimal. It's your length dimensions. What it's asking for here is how you want it to appear on the screen. This isn't necessarily the units themselves, millimeters, centimeter, inches. This is how it's going to appear on the screen. So when you're doing, let's say, a mechanical drawing, you want it to be decimal. And then you want the precision. If you're doing, let's say we're doing some ductwork. Well, you don't really need too many sig figs. Typically, you just do one decimal point. If, let's say, you're doing a high precision head for a drag car or something, you're going to have really tight tolerances, so you can put it up to 3 or 4 sig figs. If you're doing an architectural drawing, one's pretty self-explanatory. You just do architectural, which is pretty much fractional. It's set at an eighth. Most architects that I've seen use like a 1/4 inch because by the time the carpenter or someone starts hammering things, it's not perfect anyways. It's fine. Civil, let's see. Civil, I think, would still use architectural, but the dimension style will change. I don't think we're going to cover that tonight. I think we're going to cover that next week or the following week. Angle dimensions. When I first started working at my current job, we didn't just use like decimal degrees, which is what we use now. Praise the Lord. We used to use degrees, minutes, seconds. So something will be at. I've seen something at 60 degrees, 3 minutes 10 seconds. When it says minutes and seconds, you are literally going off of minutes and seconds on a clock, but in an angular fashion. It's a little confusing. I don't like you look very confused. It's the first time I saw it, I had no idea what I was looking at, and I had no idea how to convert it. Oh yeah, you can even go by days. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, that's degrees. But yeah, I don't prefer it. I'm not entirely sure what industry uses that. I'm gonna have to do more research and figure that out. But yeah, I mean, we can go do grads and radians if we want to get that crazier. Ooh, surveyor's units. I've never used. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's an actual coordinate system on Earth. That's your GPS type of thing. So insertion scale. This is where we actually start getting into the units themselves. Yeah, you can go unitless. When this. Cool. All right. Cool. So yeah. If you're working in architectural, typically you want to do feet. Civil, U.S. survey feet, or miles maybe. When you're doing mechanical, you're going to be using millimeters, centimeters, inches, much smaller units. It's the same idea though when you're creating the drawings. I mean, we can even get down to microns. I have seen machining drawings to where they are precise to microns. I have no idea how they measure that because the equipment that I've seen that measures goes to millimeters. But I know that in like some government jobs for like weapons development, stuff like that, they get that precise. What's cool is that it'll give you a sample output. It'll show you what you're actually looking at. So the top line is your length in the right units. The other one is the angle in the right units. So we can go. You can see it changing whenever we do that. And lighting, what is that for? Units for specifying the intensity of lighting. We're not going to be doing any surfacing stuff in here, so we don't really have to worry about lighting. If we cross that bridge, I will make sure to talk about it, though, but that's more for, like, 3D stuff. So, use the best. Yes, we went over all of that. Does everyone have the textbook for the course? If you guys could get that out, and turn to page 16. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Just share it with someone. So your sheet size, like I was saying earlier when I was going over the syllabus, is important to make sure that it's appropriate for what you're doing. What's nice is that sheet 16 actually shows a lot, not all, but a lot of the different sheet sizes. That's figures 21, 22, and 23 there. My guess is we're probably going to be working with, let's see here, standard B and architectural D. Even a lot of mechanical companies will just stick with architectural D because 24 by 36 is such a standard thing. Most plotters will print on a 36-inch wide piece of paper, so they just go with 24 by 36 or 36 by 48 just because of the fact that it's simple. You know, like when was the last time anybody saw an 18 by 24-inch piece of paper? I didn't think so. I've never actually seen one, and I've been working as a professional for a decade now. So it's mostly from figure 1-21, your A and B standard sizes, and then under figure 1-23, your D and E sizes. That's the 4 sheet sizes that we're probably going to be working with, but it is still good to be familiar with everything else. So I show you that on page 16, just so that you're aware of it and choosing a page size ever comes up. All right, that's a fun one. Cool. So one of the speaking of sheet sizes, in AutoCAD, as you can see down here, you have model, layout 1, layout 2. So model space, that's where you actually draw the piece of equipment or building or piece of land. So let's say, you know, I have my weird looking thing here. Ooh, okay. And then when we go into the layout, you have what's called viewports. We're going to cover viewports much later. But the important thing here right now is to show you that there's a difference between model space and paper space. And I was fighting with the company that I worked for a long time over that because we just did everything in model space, which, as my previous professor, Chuck Bales, puts it, is bad CAD. Don't do that. So model space is always called model space. It's always going to be the same thing. What's cool about the layouts, though, is that you can change the name of it. You double-click on it. I'll put my squiggly thing. And that's, I know I gave it a silly name, but that's actually really important because of the fact that it determines the sheet name. For instance, at my job, we're working on a project for, 529, and we drew what's called a hot box. Oh, that's supposed to be capitalized. It's the location 11, and it's sheet 1. So then you can take that, I'm just going to copy it, and you can put that on layout 2. And then that's sheet 2. So that's the cool part about doing that, and you can have as many sheets as you want on a single drawing. One of the annoying things about AutoCAD, unlike Inventor, is that you can't print a bunch of sheets at once. You have to go through each tab and print them separately, but it's still a pretty archaic program. So what we're talking about here, though, is the actual page setup manager. So on your tab, you can right-click, and then you click on Page Setup Manager. This, when we actually change it, it's going to look very similar to when you go to plot something, but that's kind of the whole point of you're already set up to plot. You don't have to sit there for another 10 minutes and set it up. So in order to do that, you can click which sheet that you want. Notice model is not listed in there. You don't want to print from model space unless you're like, you just need an example and you're going to mark it up. You typically always want to print from paper space. So you click on modify. And this, like I said, this looks exactly like when you go to print something, but this is the Page Setup Manager, which is still slightly different. Okay. So the first thing that you can choose in here is your plotter. We don't necessarily have a plotter set up yet. I don't think there's one in the room. I got to talk to Dr. Craig about if we do have one. So we'll just use DWG to PDF. And this is where the page size comes in. This is where it's kind of important. What's cool is that DWG to PDF has literally every single page size imaginable listed in it. But if you're using, let's say, a KIP printer, like we have a 7170 at work, it'll list only the page sizes that it's capable of printing. That's kind of pre-built into the printer, so we can do 24 by 36 or 36 by 48 on it. Whereas when we go to our Ricoh, it specifically lists 11 by 17 and 8.5 by 11. So in here, like I said, it has every single one listed in here. The most common that we always use is called the Arch D, so Architectural D. It's your 24 by 36. And if, let's see. Okay. As you'll notice, it'll show you kind of like a general preview. The hatching is the drawing itself. So right under that, the plot area. Layout is something that's like predetermined and built into your drawing template. We don't need to worry about that right now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Display is what it sounds like. It's literally what you're looking at, but it'll fit on the paper. Extents is everything that is in that particular layout. Extents is a pretty cool one to use and pretty simple to use with the right scale, as long as you are as long as you don't have anything outside the bounds of the sheet of paper that's drawn. And then window is what it sounds like. Window I like because you can just go in here and just click a window and it pops right up. So you'll notice my hatched area got smaller because of the scaling of the paper. Right under that you have your plot offset. Plot offset is kind of what it sounds like. It'll start moving what you're looking at. So if I type in 5, it'll move it that way. And then this one, we'll type 15, it'll move it up. Typically for that, I always do center the plot at where I work, but sometimes you will want to offset the plot a little bit because a lot of companies will still print drawings, and you'll want a little margin on this side. That margin gives you the ability to staple them all together. Or let's say you're printing it for just like an 11 by 17 binder or an 8.5 by 11 binder. It gives you the ability to have a margin on there to put your 3-hole punch in and actually put it in there. So like I said, I usually center the plot at where I work. Plot style, that's something that we're going to dive into later. I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but that's called, it's referred to as pen settings. Your pen settings determines how thick something prints. So let's say we have, that's a good example. We have a layout of a building, and we are demolishing some equipment, and we're going to be putting in a new boiler. So the line weights tell the building itself to be lighter when you print it, but then the boiler, all the new equipment, all the piping, all the HVAC going to it, that's going to be bold, showing what actually needs to be installed. That's what makes plot styles so important. But like I said, we're going to dive into that in a later course. Shaded viewport options. I've never really used that, so we're not going to worry about it. Plot options. So plot object line weights. So that means that means that it's actually going to use the pen tables. Plot transparency makes things transparent. Pretty simple. Plot with plot styles. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We'll rewind 1 second. Plot with object line weights. You can actually change the weight of a line in model space to what you want it to be. Whereas the check plot with plot styles means that it's actually going to plot using this. Plot object line weights is kind of an override, basically, that can be used from the layer properties, but we're going to talk about layer properties a little bit later. Hide paper space objects. So everything that's in your paper space is hidden, but you can see everything in model space using your viewports. And then drawing orientation, I'm sure everybody knows what that is. Portrait, it's standing up. Landscape, it's laying on its side. Typically, you're going to use landscape because you want it to go with the width of the paper. Very few times I've seen it done portrait, but it is sometimes necessary. You can plot it upside down, apparently. I don't really know why you would, but with everything set up on, the last one here is the plot scale. What's cool is you can fit it to the paper. Bam! All your hatching goes to the extent of the paper. It is fully within there. You can also do a custom scale. So let's say I do 1 to 5. It's contained with completely within. Oh wow, that's tiny. Or I can do 1 to 1/8 of an inch. As you can see, there's red. If it's red, it means it's off the paper and it's not going to print that. So that's why getting your plot scale is important. What's cool though is that AutoCAD has all of the different scales built into it. You don't necessarily have to plug those in. And if you'll notice, a lot of these like 1/64th to a foot, 1/32nd to a foot. Has anyone ever seen an architectural ruler? What's cool is that when you print something to scale and use an architectural ruler and you measure it, it's spot on. I do it all the time at work. It's pretty convenient. So this one, let's see here, 1 to 1. No, we'll go up to 1. No, we want 2 to 1. So yeah, 2 to 1 puts it nicely on the paper. We will be talking more about this type of stuff later. But hit OK, and you hit close. And it nicely puts it on the 24 by 36 piece of paper. I did that. We'll get up to these exercises and then take the break. Grid and snap. I explained this a little bit earlier. Go back to your model space. Come on, there you go. Like I said a little bit earlier, you want to go down to your the grid display. Right-click on it and click Grid Settings. Before I go into this, does anyone have any questions? Cool. So what's nice is with your snap settings, you can actually change the distance between each snap. So let's see, we can do 1 by 1. So when I go to draw the line. Let's get right on the line and zoom in. You'll notice it's a pretty big interval when you're zoomed in. And on top of it, you see 1, 2, 3. It goes by 1 unit. Whereas when we go into our grid settings, let's change this down to, let's say, 1/8 of an inch. Oops. 1.25. Now when we change that, and we go to snap, it goes by 1/8 inch intervals. On top of that, if let's say you're zoomed in or super zoomed out, you can change your grid spacing, not just the snap. So, we did that, polar spacing. Snap type, you can do rectangular snap, which is what we've been working on, or you can do an isometric snap. Does anybody know what isometric is? It's kind of like 3D, kind of. There we go. Yeah. So it changes the appearance of the grid. so that you can, yeah. It changes the appearance of the grid so that you now start drawing something as if it appears to be three-dimensional. Something like that, right? Yeah. Oh, those settings are off. That's okay. So yeah, isometric. Now we have a three-dimensional cube. That's typically done to show like pipe runs and make it look somewhat accurate and give you a general idea. The units when you're doing an isometric view are not accurate unless you're working in 3D. So these drawings are important, but not necessarily what we'll be doing. So go back to your grid settings. You can change it back to rectangular snap. Grid is on. Grid display type. The important thing here is the grid spacing. So right now, just to show you, our grid spacing is set at a half a unit. You can actually change that. So if you're super zoomed out, maybe you want it set at 5 units. Hit OK. The size of it changes. Typically, you want your grid spacing to be smaller than your snap spacing. Let's see here. We did that. Oh. Let's see here. What page is that? 20. What is this that I said I wanted to go through? What? I did that. Okay, that's cool. Saving and opening, we know how to do that. Closing. Okay, oh, look at that. Perfect timing. So one of the things that I did want to mention is when you go to save a drawing, something that you'll notice is let's say you save a drawing, and then you move it just a little bit. It'll ask you to save the drawing again. AutoCAD likes it when you save stuff as often as humanly possible. When you do save, though, it'll actually give you 2 different files. So like I said earlier, you want to save often. Sometimes you lose your work. Well, you have what's called a drawing file, .dwg, but then it also creates a backup file, .bak. Sometimes your file will get corrupt or you lose your work because the program will crash. In the event that that happens, you can delete the .dwg and change the suffix of .bak to .dwg, and that backed up drawing will actually give you all the work that you did at your last save point. It's a pretty neat feature that has saved me several times. For some reason, my company doesn't like having backup files, and it drives me crazy, but whatever, that's their problem. So let's see here. Yeah, like I said though, the interesting thing about saving and closing a drawing is that anytime you do anything, it'll ask you to save again. Even if it's just like a tiny little scroll out, it thinks that you've modified the drawing in some way because the appearance has changed on the screen, so it'll ask you to save again. We can go ahead and take a 10-minute break. When we get back, we're going to go through a few exercises, go through chapter 2, and hopefully get on in life. So yeah, go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Um, I'm mostly into racing games. Forza, played a lot of Destiny too. Um, not so much anymore, but yeah, tons of Forza. I used to play Gran Turismo. I'm a big nerd about Mega Man. Not gonna deny that. Um, I'm looking forward to Forza Horizon 4 is coming out in October. Um, that one's gonna be pretty exciting. I've been a fan of all those so far. Regular Forza has gotten a little boring though, because it's the same thing over and over again, just different cars. Um, Also a bit of a nerd about Pokemon Go. Not gonna deny that. Kind of proud of that one, you know. But what else have I played? What was it? Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. That was actually an oddly good game. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. And before that, though, I think Final Fantasy VII was the biggest one for me. Which
What do you watch on Twitch?
there's actually a dude that goes to my church, Mojo57. Ever hear of what's his name, Moon? That dude's weird but hilarious, especially when he plays Grand Theft Auto. I'm assuming you've heard of Ninja. Yeah, he lives over here somewhere.
Really? He's close.
He lives in the west suburbs. Yes. Yeah, I have no idea where, but he lives in the west suburbs.
We're like curious where he was. We knew he was like somewhere.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, he's in like the west or northwest suburbs somewhere. It's super weird. Yeah.
Wonderful Muppet noise.
Yeah. I think the funniest streamer of them all, in my opinion, is Tim the Tap Man. I love when he starts screaming. The guy's hilarious.
Or just like tries to do something that he can't do.
Yeah. Did you see the one stream where they built a ramp for the shopping cart?
Yeah.
That was ridiculous. That was one of the funniest streams that he's done. Okay, so cool. Let's hop right back into this and make sure we cover everything tonight we're supposed to. So there's some grid exercises that they have in the book that I'm not necessarily going to go through because a lot of companies don't even use grids. If you want to, though, it's exercises 1-1 through 1-4. If you want to go through those on your own, but it kind of shows you how to set spacing in paper size, stuff like that, based on what we were going through tonight. Sometimes I have trouble finding stuff in books for classes that I've attended. Everything I'm talking about comes directly out of the book. So everything that I talked about in this first part of the lecture is Chapter 1. Everything that I'm going to talk about in the second part of this lecture is Chapter 2. So, to start this out, I'm going to delete everything on the screen, because that actually is a little important. Delete. And then I'm going to, turn snap off, just because I don't want it on. So, drawing a line. It's the most basic command of them all, and there's a million different ways to draw a line. You can go up to the ribbon, click on line. I'm too lazy to do that, so you can type in line. I'm also too lazy to do that, so I type in L and hit spacebar. So lines, it's literally just vectors. The difference between this and, like, let's say Photoshop, stuff like that, Photoshop is an actual image. Vectors take up a lot more file space, which is why printers don't like printing from AutoCAD, but we force them to anyways. So, yeah, when drawing a line, like I was talking about earlier, you have the dynamic input. You can make it 54 units long, you hit tab, and you make it 25 from your horizontal. So one of the cool things about your line command is, there's your line, there it ends, but you're like, oh my gosh, I need to draw from the end of that line again. In order to restart the command, you can just hit enter again, so you're in the line command. Now if you hit enter again, you're actually going from that last point, which is pretty nifty. Makes my life a lot easier. And so you can just kind of draw, as many lines as you want. You can use the dynamic input. Where's the snap settings on this thing? So something that I personally want to show you guys real quick is your snap settings. Down here, yeah, snap cursor to 2D reference points. Right-click on that and click Object Snap Settings. So this is the most useful thing in the whole entire world because of the fact that it'll click on pretty much anything that you want. So, if you want the endpoint of a line, you click on endpoint. If you want the midpoint of the line, you turn on midpoint. You can do the center of a circle. You can do the geometric center of something. I don't really use that all much. You can do nodes. Nodes are good for when you're doing spacing. If you divide a line, it creates these imaginary nodes, so now you can click on the node. Quadrant is good. That's great for circles. Intersection, two lines cross over each other, including polylines and what's it called? Circles, things like that, ellipses. Insertion point, that's for if you're using a block. We'll talk about blocks later. Perpendicular, that one's good for what I do. You can take it or leave it. Tangent is, does anybody know what tangent is? Tangent is where, tangent is if you have a circle and you draw a line and it touches that single point, but it's perpendicular to that. I'm sorry, parallel to that point. It's parallel to the outer circumference of the circle. I can show you what I mean a little bit later. So then we have nearest. That's your nearest point. If you have a line, you can click on any point on the line, and it'll be on the line. I don't really use that as a snap setting. You can actually type it in later when you're trying to find something. Apparent intersection. I've never really used that. Snaps to the visual intersection of two objects. Oh, that's for 3D space. We don't have to worry about that. And then parallel. That's what it sounds like. You can make a line parallel to one another. So then you hit OK, and you have all your snap settings. And when this blue box down here is on, or blue, that means that it's actually on. So with that, let's say you draw another line. But you did something else, but you want to go back to that endpoint. So you can start another line, and you go to the end of it. That box pops up. Now you're on the endpoint. You're right where you want to be again. One of the cool things about... Okay, that wasn't my phone. One of the cool things about drawing lines is, like I said before, there's just like a million different ways to skin a cat here. So let's say you're drawing just a triangle. And your snap's not working for some reason, and you're like, I don't know how to turn, and I'm in the middle of this. So you have your line 1 and your line 2, so you have 3 points drawn, but you want to go back to the original one. Like I said before, you can type in C when you have no commands going on. That'll start a circle. Well, at this point, if you type in C again, if you type in C right now, when you're in line command, it'll close it and make an object. Now let's say you're in a command. So I know that like the escape button is like the most useless button on the keyboard, except if you're using AutoCAD. It's actually one of the most useful ones out there. So let's say you're in a command, you're in the middle of the line command, and you're like, I don't want to use that line anymore. You hit escape. That's it. You're out of it. It'll cancel out of absolutely everything that you're doing. Or let's say you're in the line command, and you draw a line, and you're all done. You hit the space bar. Or enter. Same thing with what we're doing. So that'll get you out of the command too. Or let's say your keyboard stops working for some strange reason. You can right click and hit enter. So there are so many different ways to do the exact same thing in AutoCAD. It's kind of funny because this program is overkill and yet archaic all at the exact same time. We did that. Close the triangle. Snap to endpoints. Erasing lines. As you've noticed, I've kind of erased a lot of lines. So if you want to erase a line, you can just click delete on your keyboard. Or you can select it, and you can type in delete. Or you can also... Control Z. Right. Okay. Or you just type in D, enter. Wait. Oh, no. I'm sorry. That's the wrong thing. This is... What? Which command was it? What am I doing here? No, that's explode. Single object group. There's a single letter command to do it, and I can't remember what it is for some reason, even though I use it all the time. Yeah, I can't remember. If I remember, I'll make sure to say something later. So now, I saw you guys playing around with the fencing earlier. When it comes to selecting things, notice I've drawn just this weird obscure polyline, weird obscure feature. That is exactly what we want here. So let's say you do want to erase something, and you want to erase it using the perimeters that you can draw. When you draw a perimeter, you click. When you go to the left, everything within it and what it touches is being selected. But if you start from the left and go to the right, everything that's within it is selected. So you'll notice when I start on this side, these 4 lines are being selected because these are fully within it, but it's touching these. When I go from the other side, these 3 lines are being selected, but even though it's touching these 2, it's not selecting them. So that's the main difference between the 2 different types of fences that exist in it. And as some of you saw earlier, if you click and hold down, you can draw a perimeter to select what you want. Does it go? Yeah, it does work in both directions. That's what I was saying. A guy that I used to work with was our boss thought he was doodling and that he was bored, but no, he's doing his job, which was sometimes shocking, but you know, it's cool. All right, making good time. Page 35. Any questions on any of the line stuff before I go on? Okay. Page 35. All right, so we're going to work through an exercise right now. Snap points, and I'm going to show you kind of the what's good about using your grid lines and your snap settings. So yeah, go to page 35. And it's this line snap points, 2-4 on the bottom. We'll work through that. So first, we're going to set our grid spacing, which as you know, is in here, grid settings. And we want to set, let's see here, set the grid spacing for 0.5. Grid spacing, right here, 0.5. What's nice is that when you set your X and you click on the next box, it pretty much always will match the first one. And snap spacing is also going to be at 0.5. Turn both commands on, so our snap is on, our grid is on. If you notice, next to grid you have F7, next to snap you have F9. So I know that like nobody knows what the F keys are for at the top. It's for programs like this. So if you click on F7, grid's off. Click on it again, grid comes back on. Same thing with F9. It's going to turn your snap on and off. So a lot of the F keys will turn a lot of those on and off. Any questions on that one? Okay. All right. So we're going to select the line command. You can grab it from the tool panel up top, or you can type in L, type in line. We want to have it on a nice we want to have it like right on the grid. So what it says to do, yes, specify the grid line, move the cursor horizontally to the right 10 grid spaces. Okay. And press B. So yeah, we're gonna go 10 grid spaces. And we're gonna click. Now if you'll notice, my lines like to line up at certain angles. That's called your polar tracking. We'll cover that more later. You also have what's called ortho mode where you can only draw in 90s. It is very useful for certain types of drawing. But like I said, we're going to cover that more later. So yeah, we went 10 spaces this way, and then vertically 6. Now it says you can move it 6, but you also have your dynamic input. So we do have it at the correct angle. So if you only type in the first number, it's going to go in the direction that the line is facing. So right now it is at 90 degrees. So I hit 6, enter, it goes up 6 spaces. So we're gonna move 10 to the left. So again, you can now, just for fun, we'll go ahead and use our dynamic input. So we're gonna want to go 10 units to the left from the point that we're at now. So you type in 10, tab. Our dynamic input is not working for some strange reason. I don't know why. Either way. Yeah, I'll have to look at that later. Okay, well, either way, we are just trying to draw a rectangular box. So we're going to go to the left, 10 spaces, 10, enter. And now that we're back to this point, we want to put, actually, don't delete anything. I'm going to go ahead and redo this. It's 10, 6, that, no. I'm failing again. Okay. 10, 6. So, like I said, we're out in arbitrary space. We want to close this thing, but as what's his name? As J.C. Malitsky, one of my other foreman teachers, put it, we're really lazy. When I was getting my associates, their motto was be efficient. Good, just really lazy. So you type C, enter, and closes it. So there's your rectangular box. And the point of that exercise is to show you that you don't necessarily need to be typing things in. You can just follow the grid, and it'll be giving you the proper increments. And you can draw using grid. You can draw using dynamic input. You can draw using your keyboard. There's actually a way to draw using entirely your keyboard. You don't even need a mouse, but that's so archaic that I'm not even going to waste my time showing you. Okay. Interesting. We can modify the dynamic input. We're not going to do that. That's not important. So you can do what's called a construction line. They are entirely theoretical. They don't actually exist. If you go to print them, they are not going to print out. 828. Okay. All right. So if you want to draw a construction line, it's to help you draw shapes. You can snap to these things, but they are also infinite. So you type in CONST for construction line. You can type in the whole entire thing, but what's cool is that a lot of the time it'll just kind of type in the whole entire command for you. It's always looking for what you want to be able to type in, and you hit enter. So now you are in the construction line command. So you can pick any point, and the point of these is if you're basically just if you're designing something and just starting out, or if you just need like a theoretical line in there in order to get a lot of the geometry going. So you're drawing a vector, but it's a theoretical vector. So let's say we put that in there. It's at 45 degrees. We hit enter. What the heck? Yeah, okay, I guess it does have. Didn't have a start point when I was doing that last night. I don't know why it does that. Well, either way, as you can tell, it's now infinite. It just keeps going and going and going. But it is still a real point that you can snap to. So you can snap to the end of it with your line or your circle or anything like that. But when you go to print it, it's not going to be there. Typically, when you create a construction line, you just delete it after you use it. Specify through point with dynamic input. Okay. Let's see if it'll let me do this, because this thing's being a little goofy. What is this? Snap mode off. Alrighty then. Is that happening? Where is that? Yeah, I don't know why my dynamic input is off. That's okay though. Offset. Okay, so this is one of my favorite commands. This is the offset command. So I'll just draw this arbitrary line. So the offset command is it takes one of your theoretical objects and it'll it's going to take one of your objects and move it, or not move it. I'm sorry. It's going to take one of your objects and duplicate it in the direction that you want it to. So you type in offset. Offset though is also under your modify command here. Where is it at? Yeah, here. Offset. So I type in offset, and now it's asking me the distance that we want to go. And let's say we want to go 5 units. 5, enter. So you click on the object that you're going to offset, and depending on which side of it you're on, will determine which direction it's going to offset. So you click, it offsets it for you. You can also make that work on circle. So offset. Say we're going to offset at 1. Works on circles too. It'll work on pretty much any form of vector object that you can possibly come up with. So drawing a circle, I know I went over a little bit of that earlier. You can do radius, diameter. Under circle command, you also have 2-point, 3-point, tangent, tangent, radius. Those are fun. And tangent, tangent, tangent. So what's cool is that if you type in C, let's see here. I have no idea why it does that. Okay. So for the circle command, you want to click on that in the ribbon. You have 2-point. 2-point is what it sounds like. So if you need a circle between these two lines, click on the midpoints. There is your 2-point circle completely within there. Now let's say we also want to I'm going to put a circle. Wait. We want to put a circle and it needs to meet all 3 of these. You can also, it needs to be a perfect circle. So what is this, 5? No. Oh, I hit 50. That's why. That's my problem. So let's say that you have the circle in here. Now I drew a circle that's perpendicular to the other one and then offset it. So this is a perfect box. But you need a circle in there. So you can actually make a 3-point circle. So 1, 2, and if you're in a command and you want to use a near, what's it called? Near snap, you just type in near. And then it'll go anywhere near where you want it to. Click on there, you have a 3-point circle. So, tangent, tangent, radius. This is what I was talking about with tangencies. So let's say you have 2 different lines. They're not necessarily perfect, but it'll get the job done, right? So you go to tangent, tangent, radius. Like I said, a tangency is where it is on the outside. It is parallel to the outside point of a circle. So you can take one of these. You can take one of these, and then for the radius, let's just say it's 7. Tangent, tangent, radius. So it's tangent to this point. That line is parallel to the outer part of the circle right there. Tangent to this point, and its radius is 7. You'd be shocked by how often I use that. It's we'll get into trim commands later, but basically, you're putting a fillet on it. You're putting a fillet on an edge. That's all that you're really doing with a tangent, tangent, radius. And then they also have tangent, tangent, tangent. It's exactly what it sounds like. You choose 3 points, three lines. Circles are oddly difficult to choose from. Any questions on circles before I go on? Cool. see what we got here. Page 45. What is this? Circle center lines. Yeah, it's dimensioning. We're not worried about dimensioning yet. We're going to do dimensioning on a later date. Okay, polylines. So, previously what we've drawn are lines. It's just a group. Lines are just vectors, and you can connect them together and stuff, or they appear to be connected together. They have points snapped onto each other. In order to draw a polyline, either you can click on polyline in the ribbon, you can type in the full word polyline, or you can type in P-line. Those are the three ways to get a polyline started. The difference here is, let's say, I make one of my goofy looking objects. Again, I hit C and it closes. So it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different lines here, right? It looks like there's 7. It's actually one thing. And it does give you a lot of different grips so you can modify it as needed, but it is still one object now. So what's cool is that you can make a polyline into other stuff, even though it already is what it is. Is that in here? So you can modify a polyline. In order to do that, you type in P, edit. Polyline, edit. You actually select the polyline. Now, just to make sure that we understand it is a line, I'm going to draw a different thing here. So we have this silly looking polyline here. It's doing stuff. So you type in P, edit, and that polyline, you want to go ahead and choose it. And what's cool is that it gives you a group of different things that you can choose from. So the first one, you can close the command. You can join it with another polyline. You can change the width of the polyline. You can edit its vertex. That's kind of its origin point. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into blocks. You can fit it within something. The big thing that we want to do here is make it into a spline. So the spline here, you type in S. Oh, now it's a spline. There you go. So it really is that simple to edit a polyline, because sometimes you want to draw a polyline. Sometimes you want to draw a polyline using points just to make sure that it's hitting the right points, and then change it into a spline in order to give it the right contour of the part that you're working on. You can also go straight into, now, one important thing, now that you've done that, you have to hit enter, or else it'll exit out of the command and not change it to a spline. You can also go right into making a spline. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So you can either choose from a spline in your draw menu, or just type in spline. And you can draw a spline on all the points that you need. Now, you do have to hit enter a few times here. Right? Yeah. So the first time you hit enter, you can actually choose it to modify it a little bit. Second time you hit enter, okay. Yeah, hitting enter once does exit out of it. I was thinking of another command. I'm sorry. Let's see here. So now let's say you draw this spline and it came out right, but you want to modify it a little bit, but you don't necessarily want all the points to be together. You can actually explode it. So right now it's one object. Either you can type in explode. There is an explode. Where's it at? That's erase. Trim, rotate. Oh yeah, that's what it was. Delete. The keyboard shortcut is just E. When you have something selected. Yeah, so you can click on explode, or if you're in the object, you type X and hit enter. Now it is 7 different objects that you're looking at. The next thing that we want to talk about is an ellipse. An ellipse, does anyone know what an ellipse is? Pretty much a football with soft corners. Ellipses are really handy when you're projecting something when you're projecting something and a circle is sitting at an angle. For you mechanical guys, you're probably going to see what I'm talking about when you work on your project. So in ellipse, though, typically you have 2 points and then you specify the radius. As you can see, you have a center diameter that you specify, and then you can elongate the third radius. So it's yeah, that's pretty much what an ellipse is. So you can either type in ellipse and it automatically goes to that, or in the draw menu you can choose the ellipse. You also so that was what was that? Yeah, so that was a 3-point ellipse. That's your that's the yeah. So that's your axis end. That's a 3-point ellipse. You can also do a center. It's another 3-point ellipse, but instead of showing 2 different ends, it goes to the center of it. It's kind of like the same thing. You can also do an elliptical arc. So this one's pretty interesting. I've never actually used it in my professional career. It's kind of like the 3-point the 3-point diameter as opposed to the 3-point radius. So you draw the ellipse itself, but then you can determine how much of it you want it to lead. You can make it into an arc. Like I said, I've never actually used that one. I might have to try and use that sometime. So rectangles. Yeah, pretty simple. Up here, you can choose rectangle in your ribbon, or you just type in rectangle. Or is it just rect? Yeah, you just type in rect and it'll pop right up. There are some different options in there, but the main thing is getting a rectangle in here. So you'll want to click, and it'll expand out. What's cool is that either you can draw it based on the area, or you can draw it based on your dimensions. So for if you want to do dimensions, you type in D. Now the important thing to realize here is that first you want to specify your length, and then you'll specify your height. So this one's going to be, let's say, 22 long, and then height. It does say width, but that's because of the fact that when you're looking at your XY, imagine you're looking down at the floor. Z is coming up at you. So the width on this one we'll say is 12. So 22 wide. Oh yeah. Also, what's cool is that you can select the quadrant that it goes into. So yeah, 22 wide, 12 tall. We did explode command. So kind of like what I did on this polyline. When you draw a rectangle, it pretty much is a polyline with the way that it inserts it. Type in X, hit enter. Again, you can explode it. Polygon. These are actually kind of cool. There's two different types. There's 2 different ways to put a polygon in. Where is the polygon command? Region. That's hatch. No, wipeout. No. Where's polygon? Circle? No. Arc. Polygon? Yeah, here we go. Under rectangle, you have the polygon command. And you'll notice there's 2 different options here. You have circumscribed about circle and inscribed in circle. So the first one is your inscribed in circle. That means that the polygon that you draw is going to be within the circle. So you specify the center point, you specify how many edges it has, and you specify the radius of the circle. And it's going to be touching those points it's going to be touching the circle with the points. Circumscribed about circle, you specify the center, you specify the radius of the circle, and then it'll be you specify the number of edges, and the center point of each edge is going to be tangent to the circle. So we can select the polygon. At the bottom, as you see, the first thing that you want to do is specify the number of sides. So we'll draw a hexagon. That's 6 sides. Type 6. We're going to so we're going to do the center point of it next. And then this is where you do inscribed in circle or circumscribed about circle. So I want to be inside the circle. I type in I, hit enter. So it's within the circle. And then this is where you specify the radius of the circle. Make yours whatever you want. Mine will be 12. And that's how you do that. So all points on page. We have points. Let's see. Points are kind of theoretical. They're literally there, but they're kind of theoretical all at the same time. Boy, I want to get through all this. 59. Points aren't as important because I want to get through the more major things. So if you guys are looking to learn about points, points are typically made when you divide a line, but there are different types of points. Those can be found on page 59 if you're ever in the mood to read about those. Let's see here. Symbol. Okay. So the last thing that we want to do for creating things, because everything that I've been talking about in chapter 2 so far has been creating things. The next thing that we're going to do is talk about after that is modifying. So the last thing they want to create is text. There's two different types of text. There's single line text and multi-line text. Let's see here. Annotation. Yeah, so annotation. In order to create text, it's under annotation, and you have multi-line text or single line text. So you can click on either one of those, and it's exactly what it sounds like. When you do a single line text, it's a single line of text that's being made. Multi-line text is a text box. When you're generating notes on a drawing, you typically have, let's say 5 to 20 notes. That's when you want to use multi-line text because it actually acts like a word processor. Single-line text is when you have different lines within a title block, or if you're annotating something on the drawing, you just need a single line. That's when you're going to use single-line text. You can also type it in. Typing in text is single-line text. You can also specify the angle, the height, things like that. So, okay, so yeah, type in text, hit enter. Same thing as hitting text up at the top. You click your start point. First thing that you do, the first thing that you specify is your height. You can type in anything, or you can literally click the height on the screen. I don't really use that. It's kind of, there's definitely a purpose for it. It's just very old school. So let's say the text is 5 high. Rotation angle. You can put it anywhere on a 360-degree circle. 0 is reading left to right, and then it goes counterclockwise from there. So we'll just leave it at 0. And you can type in anything. So when you type it in and hit enter, oh yeah, this is it's dynamic input. Okay, so you hit enter twice. It's a single line. So the interesting thing is that when you do your text again, we got 5 0. Let's say I type it in, I hit enter, it goes to another line. Well, you can type in another line, but when you exit out of it, it is 2 different lines of text. The other one, multi-line text, you type in M text, you draw a text box. That's pretty much just a word processor. Within text, you can insert symbols. There's 3 different types of symbols. All 3 of these are in your textbook in case you need to use them. So we type text 5 0. You can do a diameter symbol. That's %C. That's where that comes from. You can also do, let's say it's 125 degrees out. You can't find the degree symbol. You type in %D. Degree symbol. Or let's say you have a tolerance. It's 25 long, but it's plus or minus 0.25. So you can do %P, and you type in 0.25. Does that, any questions on any of the text stuff? Text stuff I know is weird. There's actually like a million other shortcuts. I just don't know them off the top of my head. You can Google them. They'll pop right up. So yeah, I've shown you how to create a bunch of stuff. Now we can modify stuff. So everything for drawing is in here. Text was under annotation. You can modify things. First one is moving. So you can either click in there, or you can type in move, or this is another one of the single letter commands. Type in M. Now you're in the move command, and you can decide what you want to move. So after you decide what you want to move, you hit enter, and you pick the base point that you're moving it from. And you can move your object all that you want. Copy command. That should be the next, yeah, copy command. That's that in the ribbon, or you can type in copy. You, again, choose your items. Once your items are chosen, you hit enter. Specify the base point of the copy, and you can copy as many of them as you like. What's cool is that copying can actually be directional. I use this a lot at my job instead of offset or what's called an array. So you can do you can copy it this way, 25, 50. So you can do directional copy. We already did offset, right? Yeah, we already did offset. Mirroring. That's exactly what it sounds like. So for mirroring, again, it's under modify. That's that command right there. Or you can just type in mirror. And then choose your items that you're going to mirror. A lot of stuff that I do is symmetrical. So it's really easy to copy it or mirror it. You choose your objects that you're going to mirror. You hit enter. And then you draw, you create the mirror line that they're going to go across. It makes sure that you got what you want, but you can also erase your source objects. So if you hit Y, it'll erase what was originally there, but create the new mirrored objects. Or if you hit N, it doesn't erase anything. You can do what's called a. I know I'm going a little fast here. Any questions on any of this stuff? Okay. You can also do what's called an array. An array is where you duplicate something either in a polar or rectangular manner. So type in. You can either type in array, or arrays up at the top. Where is that at? I know it's under modify here somewhere. Yeah. You can choose an array here. Path array is something that we'll get into later. It's a little different. So yeah, you can do a polar array. Choose your objects. What's cool with AutoCAD is that so much of it is just it kind of walks you through each of the commands. So you choose your objects. It says that you have 3. You hit enter. Now that you have your objects. Now it wants to know the array type. You can do rectangular, which is a pattern, x coordinate, y coordinate, or you can do a path array. You'd have to create a path first. Unless you guys need that, we're probably not going to use that. Or you can do a polar array, which is where it goes around in a circle. So type in PO for polar, and you want a base point, or it's also called the axis of rotation. So we can just use we pick this point. What's cool is that it automatically assumes you're going to do 6 and you're going to go in a circle, but you can change that. So where is that at? Rotating. Associative base point. Yeah, so if you need, let's say you need 12 instead of 6, you type in I. You enter in the new value for the number that's actually going to be in it. I want 12, so I hit 12. You can also change the fill angle. So type in F. That's going to change your fill angle. It's assuming we're going to do a full circle. Let's say I only want 3/4 of a circle. That's 270 degrees, as we know. Type in 270. It fills in 270 degrees worth. Just like any other command, in order to exit out, you hit enter. But you have to make sure to complete the command. So there's my 12 items with the center point being in here on 270 degrees worth of rotation. You have the rotate command. That's exactly what it sounds like. Let's state. As I've shown you, you can typically you can modify something by typing in the command and then choosing it. You can also modify something by just choosing something and then typing in the command. So right now I don't have any commands on. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to choose this and I want to rotate it. You can choose it from the ribbon here. We're typing rotate. Specify a base point, and then you can say how many degrees you want to go. So using your tracking, either you can do that on screen. If you type in the angle at which it rotates, that is going to go in a counterclockwise direction. So I want to go 25. Spun at 25 degrees in the counterclockwise direction. Now, let's say I want to go in the other direction. Type in rotate. Specify that as the base point. If I want to go 25 degrees in the other direction, the clockwise direction, you type in negative 25. It's a little goofy, but nothing terrible. We have the trim and extend commands. Oh, man. Now, if you notice, this part is sitting on the spline. In order to trim, you can either go up here and choose trim. Trim and extend are pretty much the same thing. They are equal because they are opposite. You can either choose trim and extend up here, or you type in trim. And this one is very specific. First, you select the object. Let's see here. The first thing that you choose is the object that you use to slice. So I'm going to choose that. You hit enter. Then we choose the objects to slice, which is these two objects. Same thing with extend. So type in extend or choose it from your ribbon up at the top. We are going to be extending to this item. Hit enter, and then we choose the items to extend. We have the break command. Did I ever even use the break command? I don't even know. Where is break up here? Break should be in modify somewhere. Not 100% sure, or you can just type in break. Break. I've never really used this, so let's walk through this together. So, break the selected object. Yes. So, automatic. Yeah. So with the break command, you can choose anywhere on the line, and okay. Why is it doing that to me? Break. Okay, so the first, we select that. Oh, okay. So you break from the point that you click on when you select the line, and then you select the second line. It breaks it for you. It's kind of like trimming, but you don't have to trim to any specific points. We have the chamfer and fillet tables. Yeah, we'll cross tables if we need to. So we also have the chamfer and fillet commands. Sometimes in a corner you want a chamfer or a fillet. So those, let's see, chamfer and fillet are so similar that they are under the same command up here. So you, if you choose fillet, there are different things that you can do in here. One of the first ones is choosing your radius. The radius is how big the fillet actually is. So you can make it 0.25. Default is 0, so I'm going to type in 0.25. You also trim it. You can have trim on or off. That means that you get rid of the corner that the fillet is going onto. We'll leave the trim on. You can also turn the trim off to where it doesn't delete anything. So trim is on. I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to choose this. So we have a nice soft corner, and it got rid of everything else that we don't need. Chamfer does the same thing, but with the chamfer, you need to specify the angle and the length of a single side of the chamfer. Before I start doing the examples in the book, does anyone have any questions? All right. So I'm going to create a clean slate for myself here. And I'll probably do 1 or 2 examples from this and then let you guys work on stuff and kind of walk you through any questions that you might have. And the idea here is to use the skills that we have learned tonight. So, for instance, now don't worry about getting through all of the other examples. The main thing is working on the homework that is assigned. Before I get that far, just so that I don't forget about this. In the syllabus, go to page 4 under the course schedule. So, week 1, we have in-class examples 2-1 to 2-10. Your homework will be doing examples 2-11 through 2-20. What I'll have you do, you'll just have to draw all of those over the course of the next week. And next time, I'll have you guys email me, since I'll have my email address then. I'll have you guys email me the completed work so that I can check it that way. Because I will have my email address. But yes.
So that's everything in between 211 and 220?
Correct. Yes. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
You just do them all in like one drawing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because the file format, when you save it, I'll have you do your first and last name, so that when you email it to me, I know whose it is. Yeah. So yeah, let's do. I'll do a couple examples for you, and then I'll have you work on the other ones yourself. So, the first one here, example 2-1. In order to use all the skills that we have learned tonight, I would start out by drawing a rectangle. So, I have my rectangle. It's going to start at this point. So, I'm going to do dimensions. It's going to be 6 long. It's also going to be 3.5 tall. It doesn't really matter where you click because it's going to have the correct orientation. Zoom in, get it looking good on the screen. Now, as you can see, there are some other points on here. I'm going to explode my rectangle. Now that I've exploded it, I can use the offset command. From the bottom, we have a line coming up 1 unit. And then we have another dimension here that's saying it's off another 1.5 units. So I'm going to do that. And then coming in from the one side, we are in 1.5 units. So I'm going to offset again, 1.5 units. Now, in order to create that, what's cool is that the trim command, either I can select the objects that I'm going to use to trim, or if I hit trim again, it trims what I tell it to. So I'm just going to trim these, and we already have that little section created. Now, for the other side, what I would do is we're going to offset again. We're going to take the left line and bring it in 1.5 units. Now we're going to offset again, and it's going to be 2 units this time, because we're trying to create that triangle. Now, in order to get that, if you notice, that isn't necessarily 45 degrees. Wait. Yeah, that's not going to be 45 degrees. So we're going to offset a line up from the bottom. So offset 1.75 up from the bottom. Now we can actually draw the line at the correct angle, because the line starts here on this point and it goes up to here. Okay, it is 45 degrees, but still. Then we'll just want to trim everything away that we don't need. That line we're going to delete. We can delete these 2 lines. Ooh, delete. And the last thing that we're going to trim is that. So there we go. We've already created that one. Now I know I'm going a little fast since this is what I do all day at my job. Does that any questions on how I created that? Yeah.
Are you supposed to be like following along or just like watching?
Oh, you can just be watching me for these 2. Yeah. You can follow along if you want to, but yeah, you just need to watch for these. I'll do one more, and then we'll have you start on 2-3. I wouldn't be worried. It does show it does show the what's it called? The units on here, millimeters, inches. I wouldn't be too worried about that. I just want to make sure that you're able to manipulate what's going on in here and draw it properly. So, on this particular one, wow, they got stuff all over the place. I would probably start at the top here. I know this top line is 2.5 long, so I draw that as 2.5. On the right side, I see that it's going to come down 1 unit and then go in the other direction 1 unit. So we're going to do 1 here, 1 here. From there, they're tricky. See, now what I want to do is draw the line that comes down from this point. They don't necessarily give you that dimension though, but we can figure it out. So for minus 2.5, we're going to come down 1.5 units. Now, we do know how to draw that angle. So, in order to get the point that the angled line is at, it's 1.5 in this direction, and then down, it starts at 2.5, ends at 1.5, so we know it's down 1. Now we have that line. So, another line that's at an angle. We're going to come down. Oh boy. Why are we doing that? Hey, my dynamic input is back. So, we do know it's 1.5 long. And we want it at 90 degrees. So, from there, we're going to go to the right. What is that, 1? Yeah, 1 unit. Now we have that side. The bottom's pretty easy. We're going to go this way. Let's see here. That is 1.5 units. Oh, what am I doing? I'm typing in stuff I shouldn't be typing in. All right, so yeah, this way, we're going to go 1.5 units. We know that the little cutout in it is half a unit, so 0.5. This way, another 1.5 units. We know that it is the cutout is symmetrical. Like I've said before, we do have this polar tracking. What's cool is that it'll automatically give me my 90, but then it tracks. Oh, hey, there's that point from the left. So if I just click, it gives me that point, and then we know that this side is too long. That can go there. Now, in order to draw our rectangle, we're going to offset this line up 1, because it shows that it is up 1. And then I'm just going to draw an arbitrary line right here. And we're going to offset it 2. So this comes in 2. Now, we can start drawing a rectangle. At this point is when I would probably use my extend command. So either I can choose where it's going to extend to, or I can choose while I'm going. I want to choose while I'm going, so I'm just going to hit enter again. We have 2 sides of it. Trim off that piece, we don't need it. We know that it is 2.5 wide, so I'm going to offset this line 2.5. And then, how tall is it? It's 1 unit tall, so we're going to offset up 1 unit. And then we can use this line to trim because it's outside of this line. So I choose that, trim those. Same thing right here. And we have the second one created. So, I am going to cut all of you loose. So, tonight you don't have to get through all of them. Don't worry about getting through all of these. We have scheduled. We're going to work through. I'm here. We'll work on stuff. Let's work on things until I want to make sure that we get out of here on time and get everything put away. So let's work on this until 9. Yeah, it's at 9:35. We'll work on all this till 9:25. So I'm cutting you guys loose to work on example 2-3 through 2-10. I'm here if you have any questions. Does everyone have a book to work out of? Everyone good? Okay. Before you start working on it, does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry I didn't say it earlier. Example 2-3, all those start on page 82. Okay. Doing okay? Got any questions?